Joe Crowley is a corporate Democrat representing New York's 14th congressional district, and he's currently being primaried by a very progressive challenger named Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, they actually had a debate, albeit it only lasted for 20 minutes, but nonetheless, it was still great. And I think that he learned very quickly that this debate was not a good idea for him because she did a phenomenal job cornering him and calling out his blatant corruption. So at one point in this debate, they both had an opportunity to ask the other a question, and Alexandria asked him how voters can trust that he's going to represent their interests when he's taken so much corporate money. And really, he had no idea how to answer that question, so he quickly pivoted to a different subject.
My question is, how can working families in our district trust that you can fight for them when it matters? You know, we have an administration here that is obviously dangerous, but it's not enough to fight Trump. We have to fight the issues that made his rise in the first place.
Well, I see things a little differently. When it came to the issue of Dodd-Frank, I bucked against the tide of Wall Street, big banks, when I supported, and not only supported, but helped author the Dodd-Frank legislation. And we can talk to Barney Frank, he'll tell you exactly how engaged I was in helping make that become law against the interests of Wall Street and the banks. I bucked the system when I supported the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and I know you have some issues with it. I stood shoulder to shoulder with Barack Obama to make sure that that became the law of the land, that now 131,000 people in this district now have insurance that didn't have prior to that. And we largely, Errol, I think, agree on the issues. There really isn't much daylight and separation between the two of us. But there is an issue where we do disagree, and that is on the issue of guns. Because my opponent has said that she doesn't believe that the laws of New York City should be or can be applicable necessarily to the laws of New Mexico. She said that the flexibility would need to be...
That's incorrect.
No,
where'd you get that?
People can read it on Reddit at a forum.
On Reddit?
On a forum
on
that you participated in. But I just think that that's wrong. I think we need a national approach. We need to end bump stocks. We need to end automatic weapons and bring back the assault weapons ban. We need to have full background checks without any loopholes. That's the way in which I think we need to approach this issue. We just simply disagree.
So, aside from trolling internet forums, I think that one of the things that we need to really take a look at, let me make things very clear. I believe in a ban on assault weapons. I believe in a ban on bump stocks. Not only that, I also don't take money from private equity groups that have holdings in gun manufacturers either. So I think that there's really doesn't even come close, and there is no daylight here. You know, in terms of the fact that neither person sitting here at this table is a Republican.
Errol, I do think that the folks in Parkland, they don't believe in flexibility. The folks in Newtown, they don't believe in flexibility. And the people here in New York don't believe in flexibility either. If you can go to Pennsylvania, it has different laws than New York City, and dump guns in the back. 74% of the guns on the streets in New York City come from outside the city. Flexibility is not the answer here.
Now, as you'll come to see, this dodge and pivot was his strategy throughout the whole debate. He literally pulled a Hillary Clinton where he pretended to be more progressive than his very progressive opponent by saying, well, look, I'm the individual that you've got to elect if you support gun reform. Now, unfortunately, that didn't work out too well for him because she stated, not only do I agree with all of the issues you just listed, but I also don't take money from private equity groups that have holdings in gun manufacturers either. And I think that at that very moment when she said that, Joe Crowley's soul died. You can literally see it in the debate. That was a brilliant move by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because he tried desperately to make it seem as though he's to the left of her on this one issue, but it backfired immensely. That was great. I don't know how you recover from that. Now, what he tried to do was he said, well, look, you did this AMA on Reddit where you said that there should be flexibility with respect to gun reform. Now, she didn't know initially what he was talking about, and I don't blame her because when you go back to her comment about guns, She only briefly brought up the subject and tangentially discussed the idea of flexibility on gun control in other states. So when one user asked her how she'd hear and act on policies she doesn't necessarily agree with, but her constituents do, this is what she said. It's much easier to do this when you are grassroots supported. You have to listen to your constituents because your ear isn't being monopolized by special interests. We borrow ideas from both sides of the aisle that are effective and common sense for everyone. I do think my personal background helps with this. For example, I am a third-generation Bronxite and happen to be Latina, but I am also the goddaughter of an Irish NYPD police officer. I have family members who are detectives and male cousins who have been unfairly stopped and frisked. I also have a healthy view on personal opinion, which is that it shouldn't govern without consensus. For example, locally, I happen to support NYC's more strict take on gun control, but I also believe that there needs to be flexibility on the national level. NYC isn't New Mexico. My personal philosophy is that congressional representatives' duty is to represent new ideas to their constituents and use town halls and other forms of communication to lead together. So that is the teeny tiny little comment that Joe Crowley decided to dig up on his opponent, because there's not much else. Now, just based on that, I'm inclined to disagree with her, because if you actually want gun laws to be effective, then they should be the same in all 50 states. But with that being said, to extrapolate what he extrapolated out of that, and to dig that up when she really was only mentioning gun control in passing, it really shows just how desperate he is to dig up any dirt he possibly can on Alexandria. You can tell that he was scouring all corners of the internet to find whatever he possibly could to attack her on. And all that came up was this comment she made referencing gun laws. And if I had made that comment and someone brought it up to me, I probably wouldn't have remembered it too, because again, it was such a short comment she made in passing that she brought up only in reference to a different issue. And her comment, again, even though I'm inclined to disagree with what I can see or what I interpret her response to be, it's still a perfectly reasonable stance to have. So there was another instance where Crowley's corporate cash came up, and he again quickly tried to dodge the question and pivot to another issue, and once again, she backed him right into a corner.
I want to pick up on something you suggested before about the PACs and some of the corporate and real estate interests that have supported your opponent. Isn't it true that one person's special interest is another's legitimate community voice, right? I mean, if elected, would you refuse to take money, say, from labor union PACs?
Well, I reject all corporate PACs. So what that means is corporations that lobby for their own special interests. But I have worked with political PACs in order to get things done when they are constituted by people. But corporations and corporate PACs are really the real problem. About 99% of my opponent's donations come from corporations, big money, and lobbyist groups, and 80% of all of my donations to my campaign are less than $200.
That just isn't true. The people of this district know me. They know my work ethic. They know where my heart lies. And that's why they've sent me back to Congress again and again, and I believe they will again, because of what we're threatened with right now. And what we need right now is experience. And someone who can be a champion and a proven leader in Washington. I'm a proven leader. I'm in the House Democratic leadership. I'm poised at this point in time to take on this president, and I've been doing that just like I did this week when I marched in protest against what's happening at our nation's border, where this government is separating children from their mothers. It is antithetical to everything that I believe in, and that's what I fight for every day.
And you know what? If this organization is as fascist as you have called it,
I've said it's fascist.
And you have said it's fascist, then why don't you adopt the stance to eliminate it? This is a moral problem, and your response has been to apply more paperwork to this situation, to have ICE collect more information on immigrants, and that puts our communities in danger, and it also conveys a profound misunderstanding of how we should be approaching this problem.
You want to abolish ICE? What would be?
What I would suggest about that, and Kamala Harris today came out in opposition to this, because she knows, as I do, that simply abolishing the agency doesn't take it out of the hands of Jeff Sessions or this president. We know it's about making change in Washington. It's about Democrats taking back control of the House of Representatives. And that's what I'm about doing.
Now, when she said that about 99% of his campaign contributions come from big money corporations and lobbyist groups, He denied that. And he's just brazenly lying because literally less than 1% of his donations, 0.79% to be exact, come from small donors. That small dark blue sliver on the left of the bar that you see there represents his small dollar donors. And it's basically nothing. So literally all the other money he's receiving, more than 99% of campaign contributions, comes from big money donors. So it's true. And to deny that is a bold-faced lie. I mean, this is a verifiable fact that Alexandria brought up, and rightfully so. But according to Joe Crowley, that's not a problem because, quote, the people of this district know me. They know my work ethic. They know where my heart is. Right. So, they know where your heart lies, so you can just take all the corporate cash you want to, and it's not going to be a problem because they know that deep down inside you're a good person. They know where your heart lies. But that is an empty platitude because, yes, I believe your constituents do know where your heart lies with large multinational corporations, with the military-industrial complex, who you continuously support and bolster and vote in favor of. So to say that is one of the most embarrassing dodges ever, but we get to the real dodge where he brings up, which is Trump's immigration policies, which is precisely when Alexandria dealt him the death blow by calling him out for not advocating for the abolition of ICE. So he proceeded to pretend to be outraged by Donald Trump's fascistic immigration policies, but he won't support the abolition of what's basically American Gestapo, ICE. I mean, this guy is so full of shit, you can probably smell it on his breath. What a liar, what a disingenuous prick this guy is. So look, in conclusion, I had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on my show last year, and I would highly encourage you to watch that interview. I'll link to it down below. She's one of the best candidates I think I've ever seen, hands down. And I don't just mean that in terms of her having what I think is an effective political strategy and electoral strategy, but she's as progressive as they come. She supports ranked choice voting. And I have no doubt in my mind that she would be a progressive champion in Congress. So if you want to support her, if you want to defeat a lying corporatist shill like Joe Crowley, you can visit Ocasio2018.com and donate to her campaign and help give her a boost in this last stretch of her campaign, because we've got to get people like Joe Crowley out. I think progressives have been really demoralized that a lot of these primaries haven't gone their way because time after time, corporate Democrats, incumbent Democrats specifically, they have more name recognition and they are outraising their progressive challengers by pretty significant margins, and as a result, they're winning by very significant margins. So make a difference. Help and contribute to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's campaign. I'll leave you with what I think is one of the best political ads ever created from Alexandria.
Women like me aren't supposed to run for office. I wasn't born to a wealthy or powerful family. Mother from Puerto Rico, dad from the South Bronx. I was born in a place where your zip code determines your destiny. My name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm an educator, an organizer, a working-class New Yorker. I've worked with expectant mothers, I've waited tables and led classrooms. And going into politics wasn't in the plan. But after 20 years of the same representation, we have to ask, who has New York been changing for? Every day gets harder for working families like mine to get by. The rent gets higher, healthcare covers less, and our income stays the same. It's clear that these changes haven't been for us, and we deserve a champion. It's time to fight for a New York that working families can afford. That's why I'm running for Congress. This race is about people versus money. We've got people, they've got money. It's time we acknowledge that not all Democrats are the same. That a Democrat who takes corporate money, profits off foreclosure, doesn't live here, doesn't send his kids to our schools, doesn't drink our water or breathe our air, cannot possibly represent us.
What the Bronx and Queens needs is Medicare for all, tuition-free public college, a federal jobs guarantee, and criminal justice reform. We can do it now. It doesn't take 100 years to do this. It takes political courage. A New York for the many is possible. It's time for one of us. Vote for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on June 26th.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.